As an agent, my only advice is put a lot of effort and systemize the out of every single hour that you put into this business. Otherwise, you're going to work for the rest of your life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of More Than a Sale. And today I have a very special guest who has done a lot of volume in real estate, 400 million plus. He's a broker with Remax Realtron. He's built over 7 homes, been featured in multiple magazines, articles. Sahil Jaggi, welcome to More Than a Sale.
Thank you for having me. 2014, when I got my license, but it just did not sit well with me. Because for me, it was always about where is my life heading? Do I want to continue working for the rest of my life like this? It was always about focusing on doing something that I loved. At some point, I had to hit a burnout because I always just worked. You have door knocking to do. You have cold calling to do. You start in the morning, you finish in the night. 90 to 95% agents today are misguided. And it's like go on the camera and act as an expert.
They get their license the first year and they start advising other agents, here's how you should do business.
Exactly.
Have you seen that?
They don't know what to say. But to me, it's like become the expert first and then go out there and make sense on camera. We're not professionals. We're sales agents. You're going from a consistent income where you see a check every 2 weeks. Accept the good days and accept the bad days. Keep your head up and very, very consistent.
Listen, you're a living legend, man. You're a big inspiration to a lot of people. And I've been watching your stuff for a very long time and you're doing some incredible work.
Yeah, my respect for you is mutual. I think it's always good to meet other successful people in the industry, and thanks for that very glorified introduction. It's been a good journey the last 14 years.
Before we started, we were joking with you about your weight. I said you slimmed down and everyone was having fun. So what happened? What's the change in the lifestyle now?
It's finally focusing back on my health, right? So I think last couple of years I made health my priority, and as an agent, lifestyle can really take over.
Yeah.
So just getting back into some fitness, some routines, and in your growing phase as a real estate agent, you don't know the time, right? You start in the morning, you finish in the night, weekends, it just takes over you. And I guess that's what's reflective of me in the last 1 or 2 years. I've really taken a step back and focused on things that's important.
And knowing the work that you do, because you're always busy every single day. You have homes under construction, you have clients that you're servicing, and there are a lot of personal things. You have a family as well, which we'll talk about. What was your schedule before, and what was your routine? And then how do you create that balance for yourself now?
Yeah, so let's take a step back to 2014 when I got my license. That's even 4 years after I was an investor, right? And 2014, I also came here from India, went to university, did my investment banking. So when I decided to transition back into real estate, my sphere of influence, what you call it, was absolutely nil, except for some buddies from university.
Right.
And I realized that if I'm going to get into this industry, I really have to start from ground zero. And I was so super hyper focused into making it in the industry. And again, 2014, this business wasn't as glorified as it is today, right? So for me, it was I'm coming from banking. I have all this education that I'm almost dumping and wasting, and I'm going into real estate. So I had a way to prove to myself. And I think the energy levels for me to go into real estate was, I think at some point had to hit a burnout, right? So the first 5-6 years a blur because I always just worked and there was always something to do, right? And you can relate as a new agent when you wake up and it's okay, if the days you don't have anything to do, well, you have door knocking to do, you have cold calling to do because you're increasing your sphere of influence. So I think doing that for over the span of 10 years, seeing a bunch of cycles makes you realize how much you don't take care of your own self and your health and your family and all those things, right? And that's the transition that I think I've seen, and you can call it a bit of wisdom that's come in the last 2-3 years. And
so you have a newfound energy now. That's what you're saying.
That's it. And I think I'm also learned how to really leverage my expertise and experience really well in the last 2-3 years.
When you first started out as an investor, and you said you had an investment banking experience when you came in from India altogether, was real estate the field that you wanted to be in? What got you into the real estate field?
Finance was the big thing, right? The whole dream was become an investment banker. If you don't have finance or you're not in accounting, you're pretty much a failure, right? In business. Those are the 2 fields that were the go-to fields.
Especially as a South Asian, right?
Exactly.
You have 3 categories, right?
Exactly. I was good with numbers and that was my thing. So I was okay, investment banking seems and then again, you go back as a 19-year-old, you're expected to pick a career for yourself. You don't know any better. You just go with whatever sounds good, right? So 4 years into university, I did economics and finance, and then I got a job in Wall Street, which is, again, a dream job. While I was doing it, I realized it wasn't my calling, and it didn't resonate with me. And I also missed Toronto back because I'd already moved once from India into Toronto, made friends here, and then again to get up and go back to New York. City didn't resonate with me as much. I missed Toronto.
So you were there already when you took the job?
Right after university, I was there for a year and a half.
What was your starting salary?
At that time, it was 110.
Wow.
Starting plus bonus. Wow. And when finance was 2007, prior to the 2008 crash, our bonuses are amounted to almost 80K, and that's your starting job.
Right.
So close to 200K.
Wow.
It was a lot to walk away from. and I was good at it.
Yeah.
Right. So I was in an environment which was very, very like hustling, kind of like, how do you say it? It was very cutthroat, and you're talking about Wall Street, right? It's the dream, what everybody
In New York,
wants.
yeah.
But it just did not sit well with me.
Yeah.
It just like, because for me, it was always about where is my life heading?
Yeah.
Do I want to continue working for the rest of my life like this I could have taken the money I earned and invested into real estate. As long as you have an income source, you can still become an investor. So for me, it was always about focusing on doing something that I loved. And I know that it sounds like the new cliche and everybody says that. Most of the mentors will tell you that, but the living example of learn to walk away from something that does not resonate with you.
Yeah.
Learn to do something that you're truly passionate about. And that's all you need to do, and really put your head down. Success will follow. Right? So I'm literally the living example of that. So in 2010, I just decided to get up, come back to Toronto. And the only thing for me was I want to get into sales. I want to be more interactive jobs, and I don't want to wear a fucking suit.
Yeah.
That's it. I can't do it. I can't do this 6 to 9, what we called it. 6 o'clock you start, 9 o'clock you finish, right?
Wow.
The finance world. That was it. That was the transition. And I got a job with Nestle corporate sales. I loved that job till date. And that gave me the opportunity to drive around all day.
Yeah.
And starting to get into like seeing how undervalued Toronto was at the time in 2010. And this is when I think the economics and finance and my really inquisitive brain was like kicking in, where I was really starting to get into understanding real estate while I was on the streets.
Right.
Right? Selling chocolate, selling contracts to like Costco and gas stations.
Yeah.
Trying to like, sell contracts for Nestle.
Right.
So then
It's a complete shift, right? I mean, you being in Bay Street and then all of a sudden you're back in Toronto selling chocolate.
And that's when I started investing in real estate in 2010. From 10 to 14, I was just on a buying spree. And at the time, I was trying to do a lot of joint ventures because obviously capital wasn't.
So let me ask you this. What was that one click moment for you where you're like, I see an opportunity right now? And I've had my own click moments where I'm like, no one's doing this. No one's seeing this. Like, is anybody seeing what I'm seeing right now? And I think that was that moment for you where you're like, is anybody seeing what's happening? Like, was that a click for you? Was that a gut feeling for you? Like, how did it sort of transpire?
I think it was both. It was, I always have trusted my gut feeling, and I've always tried to like do things. And back in the day when you have less to lose, you take more risks, right? So the logic was that Toronto was a booming city, right? And I was well traveled because, back and forth, I used to go see my parents. I used to like travel all over the world. My sister lives in Singapore. My family's all over. Also to hear stories as you grow up, my dad was a struggling entrepreneur all his life. So for him, you would always hear own land, right? Even in our community, it's always about own land.
Right.
The way I was looking at, and I lived in New York, which again, the prices of real estate was insane. For me, it was like, okay, I can see Toronto going as one of the best cities to live in, because Canada at the time, I would say like politically was very stable, economically had all the right fundamentals, interest rates were low, and I could see the amount of interest the entire world was showing to move into Toronto. So for me, when I started looking to buy a condo for myself, I was looking at Yonge and Finch area where 2-bedroom condos were about $400,000.
Right.
But if you go right behind Yonge Street, you could see lots sitting on 50-foot lots, small bungalows, which could technically be converted into 2 units. I could go live in the basement, rent out the main floor, and live for free. So it was technically a hack for myself. Now we call it the housing hack, or the duplexing, or the burr. Back in the day, it just made sense for me. Like, so you're
and
telling me,
they're also promoting it. And the city's also promoting, like, take these steps to
that's right.
help
So
the housing
for me, it
crisis.
was like, okay, so what you're telling me is if I buy this small bungalow, rent out my main floor, living in the basement, and I can pay $500,000 for this massive lot.
Yeah.
So I bought it for myself. That was the first property I bought for $500,000.
Yeah.
And that was a clicking moment where I'm like, how is property so cheap here? And then it's just like when I finish work around 5, 6 o'clock with Nestle, I would just go into a deep trance of like 4 hours of just research.
Wow.
And it would be like research, looking at international prices, comparing Toronto prices to Singapore, New York, big cities, central areas of Toronto, looking at east side, west side, what Yonge Street means. And I was truly studying the whole thing.
Let's say someone that's listening to this or watching this right now, whether they're a realtor, whether they're a buyer or an investor, what would you say when they're doing their research? How should they do their research? Research that comes in many forms. Like, what were you specifically looking at for your research purposes?
I could tell you my line of thinking.
Yeah.
I think it started with a macro. It always starts with macro. Like for me, for example, like even when I still to date sit with investors and I pitch deals to them, it always starts with, okay, let's talk about the market. Let's talk about Toronto and Canada as a whole as a country. And I will give them some context. Then I'll talk about Toronto, give them some context. Through Toronto, I will focus on, and I would say zoom into the lens of where in Toronto, let's focus and talk about that. Through that neighborhood, then I will go into the street. Let's talk about that. And I would make the focus of their investment exactly how I used to narrow it down. When I would narrow it down to the street, all the way from Canada, city, why Canada, why Toronto, why this neighborhood, why this street, then I would just go and knock all the doors on the street and pick up a deal off market and buy it.
So you would actually go door knocking as well?
Oh, absolutely. That's how I started my career, and I was very good at it. And it really taught me to like understand streets really better. So 2014, as I got my investments, as my investment portfolio was slowly taking off, I think I had about 4 or 5 properties at the time, all freehold houses, all duplexed. This is when people started coming up to me and they're like, hey, you're doing this really well. Can you help us? So it was a natural transition for me to go from selling chocolates to like, okay, why don't I just get my license, get rid of this useless real estate agent that I'm using for like bugging all the time, send me this listing, send me that listing, and the guy does nothing else. Why don't I just get my license and use these tools to do things myself? So initially the intention was I'm getting my license and I can't deal with these guys anymore.
When did things officially start taking off for you? When do you find that things were like, holy crap, like I've made $1 million now and I have a lot of money in the bank, and like now I can finally, that big dream that everybody has is have a cash on hand. So what was that aha moment, or that, that moment for you, like, wow, I've made it now?
So 2014, when I got my license, I made $100K the first year.
Wow.
Door knocking, getting a few referrals. And obviously at that point, I'm like, this is not bad. Right?
Yeah.
I can definitely increase this. Second year, I touched 300K, and that was, again, a lot of door knocking, a lot of cold calling. I was doing everything I can. I was doing leases up straight, left, right, and center. I just did taking anything I can because I was so just central focused on getting my commissions up. Why did I have so much appetite for making commissions? So that I can take every single dollar and increase my investment business.
Right.
I didn't have enough capital to invest. And I had all this vision of all these undervalued properties. And I'm like, somebody needs to buy these properties. So either I'm pitching it to joint investors like, hey guys, let's go buy this. Or I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to go make my own money and buy this.
Yeah.
So the hunger for making commission was 2 ways. One, I wanted to be successful in the business of real estate because I chose that for myself. If I'm going to pick an industry, do this for the rest of my life, we're not doctors, we're not lawyers, we're not professionals. We're sales agents. So if you're going to pick something for yourself, might as well do it the best way.
Yeah.
Right? And when I got that commission, every single thing except for my basic needs was going into investments. Because I could just see the amount of potential. Call me crazy, but I was like, this house is undervalued. I need to go close some deals so I can go buy and put a down payment towards this house.
Yeah.
Also, my dad, who was a big mentor to me, one of the only mentor that I've ever followed in my life, he said something very interesting that stuck with me. His advice, he was telling me like, Sahil, just be careful. You're going from a consistent income where you see a check every 2 weeks versus a job that even if you're good at, just remember it's inconsistent. Tomorrow you're going to break a leg. You're not going to be able to close some deals. Just make sure you remember that it's inconsistent income. So always try to focus on turning that inconsistent income, even in that industry, into consistent income. And how you do that is through 3 things, which comes back to the aha moment that you're asking me. I'm going to try and relate that back. 2017 and 18 is when, I think the 14 to 18, when I got my real estate license, I was starting to make, my first 4 years was anywhere from like 250 to like 400. That was just like a permanent, that's how I was closing. I was not growing further from that 4 years, right? And all of the money that I was making was going into real estate. So my lifestyle was still like a very basement living in my buddy's den for like a year when we wanted to live downtown, to like a 1-bedroom, right? My basic needs were very like...
So you didn't upgrade your lifestyle? You're like, I made this money, I didn't upgrade my lifestyle.
No, because I didn't have money, because it was not an option for me to not invest in something I know for a fact will increase in price.
Yeah.
Right? So I still had a lot of fun. I think I'm not going to take away a minute out of my single life when I was young. So it was no regrets. I still had an awesome time.
You had money for that, Yes,
there's some money aside for that. The aha moment, I think, was 2018, where I realized, okay, you know what? The income is starting to kick in. It's starting to feel a little bit more consistent. And I always aim towards making my inconsistent income into consistent income. And that can happen for real estate agents who are, or any industry that's making 100% commission, in 3 ways. 1, create a stream of passive income, which to me was rental income. 2, create systemization in your work, which is if you're not available in your office, are your clients still being served? In that systemization, you also have to have a very good automated referral network, which means if you're not showing up to work, business is as usual. Customer service for the client is as usual, because no matter what, they shouldn't suffer. Your customer service to people has to be still top notch. So systemization, passive income, and growth in certain areas for, I would say, like if you want to do something else within the span of real estate, because real estate is not just limited to selling real estate.
It's not. There's
It's
so many
investments,
different fields,
it's development.
Yeah.
Now, if you talk about my passion, it's always development. It always has been development. Again, goes back to looking at buying land or small houses on big pieces of lots. And I saw the neighbors building those big houses. That was fascinating to me. And I remember standing outside with a sandwich in my car, just watching these construction guys work when I had nothing to do. I'm like, I just want to see this house being built from scratch. Every day I would go take a picture, and I had a timeline of my neighbor building his house from 0 to 100. I'm like, tomorrow if I want to build this house, I want to know everything there is to know.
That's
right?
incredible.
So 2016, I had enough money saved up, enough equity in my portfolio to be able to refinance and start my first development project. Again, starting from scratch, zero experience, jump with 2 feet into the pool.
I want to circle back in on the part where you were talking about your father, and you said he's been a great mentor of yours. Talk to me a little bit about your upbringing. Talk to me a little bit about, what were some of the values that were instilled in you? How did you grow up? How was it like with you when you were young? Like, what were some of the thoughts, the wisdom that was brought upon from your father?
Yeah, so absolutely, I would say the one and only mentor I've ever followed, which is why, last year when he passed away, there's a big void in my life because I'm so used to taking advice from him. He's the only person who I truly got that advice from. I think as growing up, I was born in India in an struggling entrepreneur's home. I think some of the things that instilled...
Why do you say struggling entrepreneur?
Because he went from businesses to businesses, and he saw a lot of highs and lows. And one thing that I really, as a child, got to learn from him is that the way he conducted himself was never different, whether he had a good day or a bad day. He had that ability, he had that threshold to really still come home and be the exact same. Whether he made $1 million in 1 year or whether he made $0 and almost went to business failing because of bad partners, all of that, his lifestyle never changed. It was very consistent. And that I learned from him when he explained, look, as a businessman, you're going to hit highs and lows. So you need to find your average. If you're here one day and you're here low one day, you can't move with the average. Otherwise, you're going to be a puppet to your life. You have to find your average and follow your average. And as long as your average curve is always on the upward, you're fine, right? So accept the good days and accept the bad days, and don't go crazy on the good days and don't go all low on the bad days. Keep your head up and stay very, very consistent. Right? That's one of the things. I think there was a lot of tough love too. I went to British boarding school and almost like a military school. So I think a lot of the discipline in terms of came from there, where I had to wake up at 5 a.m., go marching, wear a uniform, all of that background. I think we were shitheads as kids. And, even back home, we used to get smacked around by our teachers. All of that. I think that toughened me up a little bit, made me a little bit more thick skinned.
Yeah.
So when people come and say something that's very emotionally offensive to people here, for me, it just passes right through me. I'm like, okay, great. Sounds good, buddy. Are you done?
So I was born in India.
Can we get back to what we were talking about? So I'm very thick skinned that way.
Yeah.
Going back to India also, we had to work for everything that we had. Every single thing that we had, even household chores. We used to get paid for it. So my dad would literally be like, all right, are you cleaning the garden today? Are you cleaning my car today? What are you doing?
Yeah.
This month's salary comes to this one's pocket money.
Pocket money is incentivized
if you do some
chores,
work.
yeah.
So I think the concept of, and he would always give me that sky's the limit. You want to do more work, you can make more. So that gave me that ability to realize more work you put in, more money you'd make. And that went into my brain very quickly, right? Yeah. You eat what you kill, essentially.
And a lot of people don't realize about India is that it's a country with over 1 billion population. It's survival of the fittest.
That's it.
And anyone that has truly made it, that has come, and that's why a lot of immigrants are prospering, because they come from environments where it's either you survive or you die, and you have a family to provide, you have food to put on the table, you have expenses that you have to, and everything and every dollar and every penny is calculated to the T, because it's really about surviving at the end of the day. So when you come from an environment like that and you come overseas where a lot of amenities like healthcare are there, clean roads and facilities, they're saying now the hard part is a little bit over, and I'm so used to working extremely hard. The hard work is not changed because those skills are now transferable.
Yeah, it's the acceptance of stress in your life.
Yeah.
It's normal to have a little stress in your life. Buddy, you're not going to move if you don't have stress. Stress is a very negatively connotated word here in Canada. If somebody says stress, it's supposed to be a negative connotation to it. To me, I've always taken stress as okay, it's a fuel. Use it. And of course, later on, you realize you have to manage it. You have to know how to control that stress and use it to your advantage. But without stress, how else does a salesperson wake up the next morning and go out there and kill it? If you have no stress, you're not going to do anything. So stress is actually a positive thing, as long as you know how to control it, as long as you know how to manage it. And that I learned very early on. Also, what added to that entire learning process was absolutely in Wall Street, where I saw a completely different business culture, where people don't sit here and coddle you at all. Like, I got yelled at, I got screamed at. Working on that stressful environment also made me extremely thick-skinned for Canada. I think by the time I came here to Canada, I was almost primed to just be like, all right, and people are way too nice here, I'm going to kill it over here.
Yeah.
I had zero shadow of doubt if I get into real estate, and that's the quality of people in real estate in 2014.
Yeah.
I have zero reason not to prosper in this, So whether it takes door knocking, whether it takes bringing coffee to construction workers that don't know me, who allow me to stand here and watch a house go up, I could do it. I pushed my way into a lot of streams of real estate. I was talking to appraisers, learning how I didn't know how appraisal is done. So I would network with appraisers and I sit down and be like, I don't need to get a course. Just tell me how you appraise a property.
Yeah.
I'll buy you lunch.
Yeah.
Right? That kind of stuff. One more thing, I think an aha moment is, I think 2018, 2019, when I realized that I'm not making more than 250 to 300,000, there was something wrong. I had hit a level where I was like, I'm working a lot and I'm still not growing in my commissions. What is going on? And that's where I started meeting some people who were high achievers, who were making $1 million a year, and they realized you got to get employees. You got to get an assistant. You got to get a marketing person. And that's where it connected back to the systemization. I think the lot of agents are doing, like, I don't think you should go get an assistant when you're making 0 to 100. But I think if you want to go from 100 to a 250, maybe it's time to get a part-time.
Yeah.
Maybe after 250, it's time to get a full-time.
Yeah.
And after you hit a $500,000, it's time to get an assistant for your assistant or an intern. As you grow and you think you're going to do everything yourself, at some point in your life, you're going to sit there and question, what is your time worth? And if you're not going to consistently grow the time, and Ron, every year I sit down and I look at my GCIs, but it's not just the GCI. My template will tell me where the commissions are coming from, how many showings did I do for each buyer, how much time did I spend on each buyer, because I track my hours of how much time I spent on each buyer. And my goal is not just to close buyers, it's to close buyers efficiently and quickly. And last year, my number of average showings for each buyer was 5. So after showing on an average 4 to 5 homes, I'm closing each buyer. And the average number of time spent on each deal close is about 6 to 7 hours, including my first meeting, pre-qualification, on the road, showing properties, contracts, and closing. Is 6 hours. And then you take that commission check and you divide it by 6 hours. That's what you know your return on time becomes at the end of the year. You have to learn how to smartly systemize your business. Otherwise, you're going to work for the rest of your life in sales. And that highs and lows will kill you. And eventually you will hit a wall.
And so you're tracking all your numbers?
I'm tracking every single number, which means that if I have somebody reach out to me on Instagram, and obviously last few years, social media has been a big driver of my leads. Somebody reaches out and says, I want to talk to you. It has to go through my assistant and has to be booked only for a 15-minute call. After that 15-minute call, if I know you're a real person and I'm either going to send you to get pre-approved and qualify you, then you will come back and get a 30-minute call with me on Google Meet. After that 30-minute call, now I know what your pre-approval is, what your number is, you're an actually real buyer, you will get a 1 hour in the office with me. Wow. Well, I will tell you what your strategy should be. If you resonate with my strategy, you sign a BRA. If you don't resonate with my strategy, you find another agent. That's it. And if you resonate with my strategy and you agree with everything that I'm saying, I already have a plan for you, I already have a property picked for you. So when I connect you to that property, it's a close, right? So that's how I've really learned to systemize my thing. And then this year, I hit a lot of personal problems. And in 300 days of the year that we're into now, given in November, I've only worked 80. Not because of choice, because I've had a lot of personal issues that I hit with. And in 80 days, I've crossed $500,000 in GCIs because of that ability that I've put so much work into my systemization. Passive income, rental income, systemizing your business, and development, which I'm in the next 5 to 10 years of hard work will systemize that business. So as an agent, my only advice to a lot of people starting in is put a lot of effort into your systemizations and take this time where market is slow to go and work on your business and systemize the fuck out of every single hour that you put into this business. If you do that, you will create consistency in your life. You will create consistency in your income.
I totally agree with you there, because that's exactly a lot of agents that I feel that don't understand. And is that anything that they do in this field of work and to treat it like a business. Like when we were in school, we'd say, oh, school never taught us anything. What really school taught us were the systems and flows. Like if you go to a business class in university, what they're talking about structures. They're talking about organization, which either we focused or we didn't focus on. But now when you look at it, look, what are you really looking at? You're like, okay, now I'm busy, I need a second in line. Now that the second in line is getting super busy, we need a third in line. How do I take accountability? I need to bring one more person on. And now you have a chart of an organizational structure just trickling down. Absolutely. And a lot of times people forget about that. And that's exactly how I've done with my company as well, where got a second in command, then I got a third, then a fourth, and now we have accountability measures. Then you have department heads, and then now you're like, who the heck is going to manage the department head? Now you have an HR department now all of a sudden. And then from there on, more and more as the expansion happens.
Because as you get into the habit of delegation, you will realize what your time is worth. Because once you've learned the skill of delegation, and let's say that person goes on vacation and now you're doing their work, you're going to realize how stupid that is.
Yeah.
Right? So get into the habit of delegating once you cross 100. Also, like my second thing with this, I think industry today, where we're talking about changing landscapes, is that 90 to 95% agents today don't own real estate. And that to me is a big red flag.
Yeah.
Because if a buyer or a client or investors, which is my niche, I primarily work with investors, are coming to an agent for investment advice or for expertise advice, and that person has never owned real estate, maybe their primary home or maybe whatever. Yeah. I think the value that you will get with the agent in that 5% bracket who owns a lot of real estate is that it'll be 10x. So if a person sits across this table from me and talks about an investment, and I have a massive investment portfolio, and I'm able to share my mistakes with that person, share a lot of my experiences with that person, prevent a lot of mistakes that they can make, or almost put their investment journey on steroids based on the experience that I've had, it's a big disparity. So I think as an agent who is in the business of inconsistent income, I think it goes hand in hand to be able to go and invest in properties yourself.
I totally agree with you. And I see it firsthand as well. And not only with real estate, for me, when I look at someone, irrespective of their age, because I started young as well, and you need somebody to give you a chance and opportunity, and that first opportunity you get, you're going to bankroll it off to the second, and then bankroll the second off to the third, until you finally have a large pool of clients. And when I first got my license, everybody would ask me how old I was, or they would look at me and I said, man, I got to start doing things a little bit differently. So now when I see things online and I'm seeing someone, I'm like, man, you haven't done anything to make yourself financially free. What makes you qualified to give financial advice?
Yes. Exactly.
Right. And I'm seeing posts on Instagram of individuals giving, oh, you got to do this for your financial things, or you got to do this for your financial things. And I'm thinking, and sometimes you know these individuals, right? And in your head, you're thinking,
how
man,
do you know?
Weren't you the guy that was just spending like money in the club the other night and just like blowing it all away? Like, right, like I don't know how many properties, and you know them sometimes personally, and you're just like, why are you giving advice when you...
I mean, I don't let it all get me flustered or bother myself. It is to some degree when I think social media, a lot of the new agents are misguided. Yeah. Where they don't know any better, right? It's not their fault either, because they're getting their license. So like, what do I do? And it's like, go on the camera and act as an expert. But to me, it's like, become the expert first. Yeah. Yeah. And I've got people that I've mentored in this business that are doing really well. They're not a part of my team because I don't want to be in a team. I rather have employees and do it myself. Yeah. I've tried the team model, by the way, and to some people, it's perfect. For me, it doesn't work because the standards change when you're delegating your investors to somewhere else. But you have to learn real estate first. And how you learn real estate is by truly investing in it. Sometimes you'll make mistakes. You will go and talk to people that are in the appraisal business, the home inspection business, get door knocking, just understand the pulse of the market, and then go out there and make sense on camera. But I think the pressure is put on them from day one. Like, you're an agent. What are you going to do? Make some videos. Or they don't know what to say.
Or they get their license the first year and they start advising other agents, here's how you should do business.
Exactly.
Have you seen that?
I've seen everything, man.
I look at it and I go, you just got your license. How are you giving advice on real estate? It makes to another agent on what they should be doing,
I also try to keep my personal life and lifestyle videos a little separate. Yeah. From I try to make every post what is the consumer gaining. I now have a full-time videographer in the office. Yeah. Right? He's a full-time guy. He's making videos. And every day I'm like, okay. He's like, oh man, you made a squatter video and I got 1 million hits on TikTok. I don't even have TikTok. He manages the TikTok. Yeah, but the point is, I'm like, okay, Wujan, tell me, how many leads did we get from that video? What is the purpose of what we're doing here today is to capture quality leads.
Yeah, what's our objective? Yeah.
That's it. So if we're not getting 3 to 4 active, good, qualified leads a month from Instagram, we're failing from a quality of our posts.
Yeah.
Let's shift. So for me, everybody's objective is different. And I think that's where there's a loss in a lot of people. They're joining real estate. They're on social media. I don't know what the purpose is. Are you getting followers? Are you doing likes? Or are you actually there to capture leads?
Yeah.
For me, it makes sense and it's efficient to be on social media because it prevents me from door knocking. It prevents me from cold calling.
Yeah.
It prevents me from sending these expensive flyers. It prevents me from putting a fucking billboard somewhere because I can do all of that through social media. But the purpose has always remained to capture leads.
Yeah.
And if that's where your focus is, I think the quality of the content will start becoming better.
I totally agree with you. Sahil, circling back, you mentioned earlier that you said you ran into a lot of problems this year. And one of the things I actually wanted to ask you that we never got a chance to talk about, we were supposed to connect for a podcast and we had a date scheduled and you send me a message. You're like, Ron, I'm flying back to India. My father passed away. And first off, when I read that post, my heart dropped and I didn't know how to react in that situation. I was like, no problem, Sahil, take your time. Don't worry, we'll figure it out at another stage. How did it happen? How were you feeling? Like, what were you anticipating it? Like, what led to it?
Yeah, so just to give some background, like I've at this point lost both my parents in the last 2 years.
Oh my God.
Right. So having my dad and me were very close. He was a huge mentor to me and in a very tough way.
Yeah.
He never coddled me, he never like sat there and patted my back. For him, it was always hard feedback. Right. So that real feedback also, I think, really keeps your head down in your life. Right. He always reminded me, like, don't get carried away. You made $1 million for 2 years. Just remember the inconsistency. You might not make even a single dollar the next year. I think there's a big void in my life having a mentor taken away from me as good as my dad. I think it was a huge, huge setback. But on the flip side, I think one of the things that he said to me even before he passed away, he's like, you're absolutely ready for the world. Right? So for him, he's like, gives me that courage, gives me that.
Those were his last words to you?
Those were not of the last words, but one of the last words that he said to me is like, you're absolutely ready for the world. You know everything already, and you're a smarter guy than I was.
Oh, man.
So that really, obviously, like gives you that ability, gives you that confidence to know that a lot of people that in your life are not independent. For me to having that ability to come to a country, adapt to a country, make new friends, change countries again, come back again, shifts careers more than twice, not live with my family my entire time. Sometimes you have regrets. You're like, I spent way too much time working. I didn't spend as much time with my family as I could have because they were living in a different continent. But it has given me the ability to put a lot of important things in perspective. I think what has changed in my life is that I've really started giving a lot more time to like myself, what's important to me, and money can only take you so far. So a lot of the times for me is now take a step back. And, even if I'm not making 7 figures year a year, I want to be able to enjoy. I want to be able to like do real estate, why I started real estate. Because I loved it.
Were you there with him when he passed away, or
yes,
you were there with him?
Yes, I was there with him.
So how did it happen? So you were in Canada, you got a call and
so he was diagnosed of stage 4 cancer. So I had to go there and I was there by him the last 2-3 months. We had some amazing quality time.
Yeah.
I think I'm very thankful for those last 2-3 months. I didn't leave his bedside pretty much. Right?
And a man like that, when he's going through that stage, what was he feeling, or what was his mindset at? Was he ready for it, or did he accept that, look, it's happening any day now, and it's a process, and I don't know when that day's gonna come, but I what was that like, knowing?
Very accepting.
Yeah.
Very accepting and very calm. Right? And he was literally just living his days as best as he could without even like complaining or panicking. And his whole thing was circle back to gratitude, right? Like, look, I've had one of the best lives. I'm past 70. So, I've got the best kids. I've seen everything that I have to see in life. I'm ready for this. And he said a lot of things to me in the last 2 to 3 months that, again, it changed me a lot when I came back from that country, right? What's important, what's not important, how I want to live the next 10 years of my life. I'm truly blessed to be in a position where I am. I'm living on a lake house, $6-7 million house, barely have a mortgage on it. I have a lot of things to be grateful for. And now I think twice before taking extremely high risk jobs. For me, it's also about protecting what I have. And as you grow in your career, and you'll see, like, you're on a very upward path in your career, like doing fantastic work. And when you hit that 38, 40 mark, it's not just going to be focusing on how I grow. It's going to also be like, how do I protect what I have? So property management of 42 tenants a day, right? Keeping development projects straight, keeping your clients happy, keeping all of this, plus spending time on your health, plus spending time on travel, plus spending time with your family. All these things take over you as an agent. There's absolutely no guidance. Maybe there's some books to read. I have too much ADD to be able to read through a book. I've never finished a book in my life. And that's why I tell you, like, I have two things that I follow: my dad's advice and my book of mistakes, which means I don't make any mistake twice. That's my fundamental rule since day one. I'll make a mistake the first time and I'll shrug it off no matter how much it costs me. It could be $100,000 mistake, $200,000 mistake, and I've had those in developments, but it's like, it's noted in my book not to make that mistake again, and I write that down.
So knowing what you know now, if we were to flashback of your journey in real estate as an investor, as a realtor, as a seller, as a builder, knowing what you know now, and if you had to go back in time, how would you do things differently?
Well, to start off, I'll start when you started at 19.
Yeah.
Because it's a great industry to be in. I think it gives you the ability to spread your wings into other spheres. So, for example, like you've got real estate is not just real estate sales. It's so much more. It's a real estate company. It's a real estate investment firm. It's sales. It's appraiser. It's home inspection. So I would have loved to start early.
Yeah.
That's always there, but you can't change that. And I think I still started at 24. Not bad.
Yeah.
I think I would create some level of balance in my life, which I think there's a lot of time lost, which is why I think my career expedited so quickly, because I spent way too much time working. Like I'm telling you, man, 14, 15 hours a day. As a happy soul, I was going to bed, no problem. I just didn't even realize that I was working that much.
That's powerful. Thank you, Sahil, for joining us on another episode of More Than a Sale. And stay tuned for more episode, guys. I mean, this is a complete powerful episode that I'm very excited for you to hear. Till next time.